Hello and welcome to the Reds Report, powered by the best of Barnsley, and we are part of the TalkSport network of fans. As always this evening, there are no sort of lyrical introductions because we have a special guest. First of all, he is the vlogger and blogger from the Tykes blog. Ian is joining us. Ian, how are we doing?
Very well, thank you.
And we have Steve.
Is that it? Is that all I get this week? Well, thanks ever so much.
Steve, how are you doing?
Well, I went all right until that.
And our special guest this evening, his voice recognisable for years and years of commentary on South Yorkshire Sport on BBC Radio Sheffield. Adam Oxley. Adam, how are you?
Years and years. That makes me sound quite old. I'm very well, thank you, Carlo.
It's experience, isn't it? That's what it brings. It's the experience. Right, we're going to try and keep it as upbeat as we can. Steve, try and contain yourself as much as we can. First of all, then.
It's going to be one of them nights, is it? Go on, then.
First of all, FA Cup, away at Derby. I've wrote down here on my notes, it was a little bit of a demolition by Derby. Now, Ian, you went. How much of that was Derby were just better than us, or was it the injury of Edwards? How did you see the match? How would you summarise it?
I wouldn't put too much praise on Derby because I thought for 40 minutes we played really well, or certainly the first 20 minutes, and we should have probably been one, if not two up. Controlled the ball, zipped it about. Their first chance, I think I clocked it at about 23 minutes. We look solid when Edwards is in that back three. Massive loss that he's out again. And we just, typical of the last couple of games, individual errors were fatal. He got injured at the corner, straight from the corner, the handball, penalty, right on half time, and we were gone. Second half, they were all over the place. It made Derby look quite good, really. And I could tell from Duff on the touchline, the way he was kicking a water bottle and throwing his arms around, he weren't happy either. They went echoes of last season, the way they just, in that second half. So I wouldn't praise Derby too much. They did a professional job, but we were really solid until a couple of minutes of madness.
Steve, that's going from a winning run of 6 matches to 2 3-0 defeats on the trot, and the fourth game in which we gave a penalty away. And if you're talking about uphill struggles, penalties are, not ideal. Do we need to be worried, Steve? Because in realistic terms, we're 6th, a game in hand, that could take us to 5th or 4th. Do we need to be worried, or should we just be slightly concerned?
I think we need to be slightly concerned, if I were being perfectly honest. Penalties, they happen. And that one against Derby, you can't argue against it. He got his hands above his head. Whether he was getting pulled from behind or whatever, when you saw it replay, it were obvious. Simple as that. Again, I come back to at beginning of the season, if you said would it be 4th, 5th, 6th at Christmas, you'd have snapped their hands off. However, although we are 6th and still look good, actually on the field, we don't. And normally you can carry 1 or 2 players if they're having an off day. At the minute, they're nearly all having off days. And for me, there's something not quite right, to be honest.
Adam, you speak to a lot of Barnsley fans. Obviously, you cover Barnsley matches as well. What is the sense that you're getting? Because it seems to be that when we're on a winning run, people are preparing for Premier League and Europa League football in 3 or 4 years' time. But when we lose a match or we lose 2 on the trot after winning 6, it's meltdown, bored out, and it's never going to happen and everything. What's the sense that you get from the Barnsley fans? Because if you look at social media, we're doomed. But I want to try and keep it a bit realistic. So what's your view?
I think Barnsley's not alone. I think if you're talking about meltdowns at the minute, then Rotherham are comfortably outdoing Barnsley in the meltdown stakes right now, which I don't think either team really should be meltdown, but for different reasons. I've not seen the last couple of games. Clearly, I've listened to bits and been out to see Michael Duff and a few other bits and pieces, but without watching the games, I'd be quite happy where Barnsley are right now. I get that if you've watched those, particularly the last 2 games, I get the penalties. The red card clearly in the game before last doesn't help anything, so it's difficult to judge that one. Then it's a different competition. I certainly wouldn't be pressing the panic button if I was a Barnsley fan right now. I think you've been on a wonderful run. Clearly, forward options are light. Max Watters has come in. I'm sure he might get a mention as well. I know he's not fit and up to speed yet, which is another issue. And hopefully we'll find a little bit more from Michael Duff tomorrow on that. But I think compared to where Barnsley were in the summer, context is always key. This club needed a big turnaround this year. It's had a big turnaround. It's had a disappointing 2 games, no goals, 6 conceded out the FA Cup is not the way anybody wanted to start 2023. But in another 2 or 3 games' time, if Barnsley haven't won, then I think you'd be legitimate in talking about concerns over where this season might be going, particularly if nobody else has come in the window. But right now, am I worried about Barnsley? Not at all. Great chance of making the playoffs, blip, but nothing more for me at the minute.
And you mentioned it there, the signing of Max Watters from Cardiff. Not much fit as yet. And again, as soon as you hear that, don't you, because it gets told in the press conference meltdown, we do need to remind listeners, viewers as well, that 6-7 years ago was it that we brought a certain Adam Hamill back to the club who wasn't match fit, and after 2-3 weeks, not single-handedly, but had a big part to say in how our season changed. So, Ian, do we have to have maybe a little bit more faith and stop judging these signings or these announcements and maybe wait and see what this lad can actually do for us?
Yes, but transfer gossip, transfer news, fans are all over it, aren't they? And have an opinion on it. And especially with the club's record with transfer windows over the last couple of years, you can't help fans being sceptical. The lad's stats, I've not seen him play. The lad's stats when he's gone out on loan to, is it League One, League Two, has been pretty good. Struggled at Cardiff, but I think the main thing was the terminology that Barnsley put it out that they broke down the door to get him, and then you find out he's about 3-4 weeks away from match fitness. Does get you going a little bit. So
at least you don't need a visa. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, be waiting a couple of years.
We'll be June before we get him out.
Yeah. So give the lad a chance, and also we've got to be careful not to put too much hope on him either. If he is the only striker that comes in, because you know what will happen. But also, I mean, we might touch on this. Yes, we are light up front, but we struggled at Derby with anything in midfield to feed the strikers. They fed on scraps on Sunday. So it's not just yes, we do need bodies in their quality. And I hope Adam Phillips comes back on Saturday because he can do it. But we had nobody who could pass a ball to Norwood or Cole on Sunday. That was worrying.
And Steve, given the injury of Edwards, which by all sounds of it, unconfirmed, it was a newspaper report from Stoke that it looks like he'll probably be out for a couple of months. Does that change any of the options in this window? Do you say, well, maybe we need to now, instead of another striker, we need to get some cover for the back? Or would you say that was needed anyway?
Not instead of another striker. We still need another striker. But I think it's plain to see that if Edwards is out for 2 months or 3 months, we need another decent centre-half. And that now, from having a riches of centre-halves, it proves now that we are very light. Cundy, again, didn't cover himself in any glory on Sunday. And you look at who there is to come in behind him, and, we talked about being concerned at the start of the show. I'd be very concerned, because if anything happens to Anderson or Kitchen now, wow, it don't bear thinking about, really, does it?
Well, and that is the thing, because this is Barnsley FC, and the model is that we bring players, we develop them, and then, if possible, sell them on for a profit. We did our report cards a couple of weeks ago, and Mads Anderson for us was so far the player of that first, 4 months or so. If a decent bit comes in, potentially you could lose the captain and one of the better performers, but in that position as well. Adam, it's strange though, isn't it? Because from New Year's Eve onwards, Barnsley fans were saying, oh, it's going to be the last day of the season, the last day of the transfer period. And then within 2 days, we signed somebody. Okay, he's a couple of weeks away from match fitness, but even that's not good enough. Is it Are the Barnsley fans being maybe a little bit hard, or is it, as Ian says, we go on past experience, and therefore, they said judge us by our actions, and bringing a striker that might not be match fit is maybe just the ammunition that Barnsley fans need?
I suspect it is the ammunition, and I think it's absolutely fair for Barnsley fans to go into a transfer window with concerns and fears because of what we've seen over the past few years, either in players not coming in or big players leaving. It's not quite been the fire sale of the Paul Heckingbottom team that was just ripped up from the great promise that showed, but there always had seemed to be one or two big names that left. And when you lose the quality of striker that the club lost last summer, and admittedly Norwood's done okay and Cole's been great, I think, this year. I think he's surpassed a lot of expectations. I'd have him behind Anderson in terms of my list of players this year, just because of expectation levels. I think with Waters, that he might be only a couple of weeks away. I mean, and if you look at his pedigree, the fact he's gone for £1 million, the fact that Michael Duff and the club have been pretty open about saying that the finances aren't there this year, there's a black hole from last year, that there's not much money around. He seems to be, let's bracket him as good a type of signing as Barnsley could have expected. It might not have reached the heights and the excitement of maybe some of the names that people want, but that was pretty good for me. And still, he'd be a good option. Yes, do they need another defender? Yes. Do they need another striker? Yes, before the end of the month, because you can't turn down an opportunity to have a crack at the playoffs. And I, for one, didn't think that Barnsley would quite be good enough to do playoffs this year. As the year is turning out, there is a chance there. And I think, like kind of Steve says, there's right concerns there that with a couple of injuries, it might not have enough. So a couple of additions this month, and Barnsley might have that opportunity of getting straight back up. And we've seen with bigger clubs, let's not get into that debate tonight, but there's been some very sizable clubs that have spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons in League One and not got back. So that can be my reading of that. But yeah, I can understand the concern based on previous, but yeah, we'll judge in a few weeks, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose it's the 11th of January, isn't it? We're not at the end yet. If this was it, maybe then, they will fire that ammunition. And just quickly back to the derby match. Matt Anderson obviously sat out because of the red card. Liam Kitchen made captain. Steve, I'll come to you first. Is he a leader, or should I say, have we got, besides Matt Anderson, any leaders in the team? Because when you look at that team, a lot of the players have sort of come in, back out, back in from being loaned out last season, first season with Barnsley. Do you see any leaders on the pitch?
For me, I think I've said it before. I don't know if guys will agree with me, but when you watch us playing, and yeah, we have gone 6 unbeaten, but last 4 or 5 games, let's face it, have been pretty poor performances. And we've been lucky in the respect that we've picked points up from them. But when you look at the players on the pitch, the only one for me that seems to want to sort of be gobby and telling people what to do is Connell. I think he's been leading by example this last couple of games. Yeah, he's fiery. Yeah, he's a sending off waiting to happen. But he seems to command his own area and his own playing and his own playing style. I personally would have. I know he's new to the team, but I would have thought he'd have been a better bet than Kitchen, to be honest.
What about you, Ian? We've talked about Connell a lot, haven't we? We did the report card, and it was the spine that were the 3 outstanding players so far. It was Anderson, it was Connell, and it was Cole. For the future, yeah, could you see him as captain material, or what did you think as Kitchen as the sort of vice captain at the moment?
I think we've got to be careful with Connor. He's had a great season. He's 21, so we don't want to put too much on those young shoulders, but he has been a revelation, really. Kitchen, I want to put him at. I think there's only really Anderson and Connell who are leaders on that, or are vocal leaders on that pitch. If you need somebody to, the old traditional sort of captain, clench fist, get the team going, they're the 2 likely ones. And I think I tweeted at some point through the game or after the game, I said, we looked leaderless in that second half against Derby. And I know it was mainly that game, but I just think we didn't have Anderson there. And I don't want to slag Kitchen off too much because I think he's had a good season. But if you're asking me, is he captain material? I wouldn't say so at this point in his career, no.
Because of the FA Cup and Sheffield Wednesday getting a victory over Newcastle, that does mean I see, this month is a little bit easier because in that week, if you remember, we play Exeter on the Tuesday, I believe, and then Sunday we'd have the South Yorkshire Derby, so that game is not there. The first match though is Charlton. That's not going to be easy either, is it? So I'll take you first, Ian, and then we'll go to Adam.
No, I think Dean Holden's started turning them around already. I know from what I saw of the game at United in the Carabao Cup last night, they played well. They've won the last 2 league games. They've had a little bit of a new manager bounce. It's never an easy place to go to. I know obviously like the mid-table, but they've had a bit of a shocking season, really, hence why they sacked the manager. I think it's going to be a tough game. But it'd just be typical of Barnsley and Duff to go there and get a 1-0 victory. But that's what they need. They need to really just scrape something to get back on a run again. But it's not going to be easy because it wasn't easy at Oakwell, even though we won 3-1. They were very good on the break. A lot of pace and a lot of width. And it wasn't a 3-1 game, I didn't feel.
And the second half season will be really interesting, won't it, Adam? Because the clubs that are contending it or really, playing that part at this moment, they still all have to come to Oakwell. We've still got Sheffield Wednesday to welcome. We've still got Plymouth to come. We've still got Ipswich to come. Portsmouth is both home anyway, I believe, isn't it? Because the first one was cancelled. So realistically, and not as an outsider, but obviously we're, through and through Barnsley fans. From your point of view, Barnsley's chances of getting into playoffs, how are they related to this transfer window? If they don't do any more business, does that really diminish some of those chances, or do you feel that actually they will need to add to the squad to have a chance to consolidate where they are now?
Well, first things first, I'm looking forward to the welcome that Sheffield Wednesday get. That will, I'm sure, be warm and friendly and particularly cordial.
As always.
As always, we were all friends in this part of the world, aren't we? Of course. Absolutely.
I just thought that end's big enough to get them all in. That's all.
Well,
thousands coming, thousands of them.
Thousands over the hill. I would have concerns about Barnsley's hopes of making it into the top 6 if the squad wasn't added to. I think with a couple of injuries like we've seen to key players, Adam Phillips was on a great run. He's picked up a bit of a knock. I don't think there's any surprise that that's coincided with this because he's just done such a wonderful scoring run, and it does need people like Phillips to step up and score because even though Devante Cole's having a good year, none of the strikers are entirely prolific. And while Cole might go on and get 15, pushing 20, Norwood might get 10. That's not the kind of numbers that just them two alone is going to get Barnsley into the top 6. I do think Barnsley got a good shout this year. Charlton away, you'd probably take a point right now. I think for all the reasons that you guys have said about their form and what they've done and that little bounce that they've got, they're a big team anyway. Let's be honest, they're one of those teams that we kind of referenced a little while ago, that former Premier League team that have found themselves out of those top 2 tiers for a while now. So they're one of those. I'd look at the games after that as more winnable. So if Barnsley can get, 5 points, 7 points out of the next 3 as a whole, then that kind of steadies things a little bit while a couple of people come in. And let's be honest, as long as Barnsley are in touching distance of those playoffs going into the latter stages of the season, if you go back to the start of the year and what could have been expected this year, people would have taken that. So yeah, it'd be wonderful if Barnsley could get on another winning run, get back up to 3rd, 4th, get a little bit of a gap to 7th and 8th. But I think as long as Barnsley are in contention after the horror show of last year, then that could still be deemed to be progress.
And Ian, for me, there's no doubt the best signing Barnsley have made has been Michael Duff, obviously, in the summer. Some of the players that were on the fringes of maybe leaving or just not performing are look at the Venti call, and I think that the man management style, his style of managing and getting the best out of the team is probably second to none. And it's been a while since we've seen that Oakwell. You probably have to go back to probably Valerian Ismail or maybe Daniel Stendhal. Are there still players playing there or thereabouts that you think it's not worked for them? When I looked at social media, especially after the match, lots and lots of people talking about Josh Martin. The Doncaster game, the game it was the Pizza Cup, wasn't it? Absolutely fantastic, and show what he could do. It just feels that when he comes on, mainly as a substitute now, it feels like, I don't know, like the brakes are on. Is his head in the right place? Is he one of them that you want to see more of, or do you actually have seen enough and we could probably save some wages if we could send him back?
Yeah, I think firstly, Duff has been the signing of the summer, but also Martin Devaney and Martin Patterson, the three of them have done a great job. I think they all deserve plaudits. I know Steve, and I've agreed with Steve, the last couple of weeks has been saying Josh Martin offers absolutely nothing, and I was fizzing a little bit on Sunday at his poor attitude when he come on. I'll give people like Herbie Kane credit. He did keep trying till the 90th minute, and he was trying, and he was putting sweat on that shirt. Martin come off, and I get it. He come on. I don't know whether I can't remember if we were 1-0 down or 2-0 down. The weather wasn't great. It wasn't a great time to come on the pitch, but his body language was he just didn't want to get mud on his boots. He didn't want to know 50-50s, and I just thought, he's keeping a place on the bench for somebody else. It's not working. Go back to Norwich. He's had one game at Doncaster where he looked great, but ever since he's been absolutely woeful, and I personally I'd send him back and get somebody in who can add value to this squad.
Couple of under-23s gone out on loan today. Will Lancaster's gone, Aykroyd's gone again as well. And I take it, Steve, you agree with what Ian says. Central midfielder on the shopping list for you then as well in January?
Yeah, definitely. Herbie Kane, I'll be honest, I was one of his strongest critics at the beginning of the season. I thought he weren't worth a shirt at all. But he's proven me wrong, which is fantastic. He's putting some fight in. He put some fight in on Sunday. Wasn't getting much joy. Like you said, Martin came on. Martin went off. Non-event. Get shut. Benson, Benson's going through that period again where he's not firing. He doesn't look comfortable. And I think you hit nail on head. We're always shouting for strikers. We've done it for the last 2 or 3 seasons. But I always come back to, your strikers are only as good as the service that they're getting from midfield. And at the minute, we've had this problem for quite a number of years where we are not feeding the strikers with the balls they need. We had this is a similar conversation to what we had with Woodrow and Morris. At times when they were looking poor and Woodrow were looking poor, and everybody was slagging Woodrow off because he were here, there, and everywhere, left wing, right wing, trying to pick ball up. But it always boils down to the fact that we're lacking in midfield for that, and I say it every week, that quality ball, and that's what we need.
Yeah. I know this will go out later on. Justine, Man City 2-0 down at Southampton in the EFL quarter-final. Who knows, there might be a decent Southampton player willing to come to Oakwell. Right, just really quickly, we talked about the meltdown offence and everything. I've trolled the fan groups, I've trolled Twitter. Some of the headlines, I just want your reaction, and we'll go in order. So the first one, this was horrible, this was on a Facebook group, where somebody put, we need to get rid of Matty Wolf. I responded by saying, it's a young lad who's just come back from injury. And to me, young lads need to be surrounded by players that can help and mentor and blah, 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 blah. I think we have worse problems than Matty Wolf. I think the aforementioned players, because Matty Wolf, maybe at skill level or whatever, is maybe not there yet, but Matty Wolf will run through walls for that badge on his shirt. Your thoughts, Ian?
He had a stinker on Sunday, but does that mean get rid of him? No. I think I see enough in him to think he deserves to be in the squad. We've probably got better options ahead of him, but do we kick him out because he's a young lad and he has up and down performances? No, there's other players who can go before him. I think that was a bit harsh, really, that comment.
Steve?
Well, it's still before Watershed, so I'll keep it clean because I know you'll give me that look if I don't. You know what? I think some people would rather slag a player off than try and support a player and support a team. Wolf was having a really good season, a bit of an injury out for a couple of weeks, and he's come back. Yeah, it wasn't brilliant on Sunday, but we've seen what he can do, and we've seen that he's going to be a good player, and he just needs a bit more development. And like you said, it's a young lad. People that come out with comments like that, you know what? Either put a bit of meat on bone or unplug keyboard, put it in bin. Don't bother.
And the next one is for you, Adam, where somebody tagged one of the new board members and say, F off out of our club. Now, I get people have opinions, but I think tagging players or people that are the board of this football club, and I don't know, I think there's a line you can cross. I think people are entitled to moan when you pay for your season ticket or you pay for a ticket. I think everybody's entitled to moan. But tagging players or people that are on the board, I think, to me, is always a little bit of a step too far. Now, you've spoken to probably, I presume, to Khaled and other members. What's your opinion? We had this sort of reshuffle during the summer that needed to happen. We know the legacy that Mr. Conway left us with players from Belgium, visa problems, non-performance, and everything else. That's now by the by. John Crine's come back on the board. What's your impression? Because it seemed a really, really positive mood, and the first time something goes wrong, people are calling for these people to leave the club. But it's a bit unhealthy, isn't it?
What Steve said.
I mean, yeah, get in there.
I mean,
solidarity.
That's just. I genuinely, I class myself as a football supporter that tries to add context and perspective when I'm doing it, and I think that's the commentator that's helped with that over the years. That you do go and you try to have that more objective eye, because when you are a supporter, you do get lost in it, and I do get why people get frustrated and angry and everything else. But let's again. The people that all the fans last year were apathetic and angry about and wanted out the club have moved on. New people come in that clearly care about the club to as much of a degree as you can, and have brought in, as discussed, a trio of people who are leading the team that are doing really well. The bigger concern for me is about keeping Michael Duff at the club beyond next summer, potentially, because we've seen what happens before. And the club have been quite honest in terms of the financial black hole they've got and whatever else that they can't do. I don't get. So team loses one or two games and suddenly the manager needs to go and the board needs to resign and this. But I mean, just separate a couple of poor games from the club's in a nightmare and everybody needs to go. Look, back end of last season, did changes need to happen at boardroom level? Yes. It was horrible last year. Did a couple of these shows with you guys, and it was soul destroying at times because you've gone from the highs of the year before and the enthusiasm and excitement and everything else to just a nightmare of a season where it went beyond anger to apathy. And that's the worst possible thing you can have. Apathy. The minute there's a bit of anger around, okay, yeah, justified or unjustified, so be it. To me, unjustified totally, but you don't want that apathy, and that's what the club had last year. And as somebody that's been, actively covering Barnsley now since 2008, and a little anecdote from that Matty Wolf interview I did last week, where he couldn't even remember the Brian Howard and Coyote Odejayi FA Cup run, which made me feel a little sick, if I'm honest, as a 22-year, Matty Wolf at 22 compared to me now in my late 30s. Get off Matty Wolf's bike, get off the board's bike, and let's see where the next few weeks takes the club.
Yeah. I want to finish with the last thing I read on social media, and that's when when you read sometimes, and I want to just private message somebody and saying, you're best off just closing your account and maybe just start again, because they put in a fan group, what do Jordan Williams and Devante Cole bring to the team? And I was gonna respond, but I thought, no, just take a breather, have 5, and if after 5 minutes you feel the need to respond, then you respond. So I took 5 minutes, and then about 60 Barnsley fans. I mean, I don't know if this poor bloke's still alive, or put it, but this is one of the problems with social media, isn't it? Because everybody can have an opinion, but when you start querying the top scorer of our team and Jordan Williams, who made a real difference when he came back in, especially in that six match one. I mean, what possesses people, Ian? What? How do I respond? I haven't responded yet because one of your 3 lads can give me some wise insight.
Don't do it. They clearly have not been watching the matches, if I'm honest, because we've said on this show before, and I said at the start of the season, I feared for Cole this season. I didn't think he was the man, but he's turned it around. He's not prolific. He's not scoring every week, but he's dribbling and his all-round play has improved and he's getting the goals. And he's a confidence player. And when he's confident, he looks a different player. Williams, we saw it as soon as he come back from injury and we went 3-5-2, him bombing up and down. He's created a number of assists already. So it's ridiculous. That person can't be watching matches if they've wrote that. Either that or they're doing it for a laugh and trying to wind you up, Carlo. I'm trying to get a reaction.
It's a mate, Adam's mate.
Steve, for you, the last one for the evening. Victor Adebayo.
Yeah, what about it?
People calling for his head. He was never good enough, was he? And he goes to Burt. He scored 13 goals so far. Now, if social media is to be believed, there are some clubs, even a championship club in South Yorkshire, potentially looking at him. That being Rotherham. It's only what I read. Probably not true. And are we sometimes maybe too quick? Because we've had to, he left on a free, I believe, because he was out of contract. He wasn't offered a new contract. 13 goals. What would you give for a 13-goal striker to play alongside Devante Cole now? Is hindsight a beautiful thing?
I'd let him have our last for a 13-goal striker at a minute.
Not be murdered.
You know what? When next she's downstairs, she can't hear me. We're all right. When he left, I think we'd all basically decided that he'd had his run. He'd tried his best. He'd had a loan. He'd come back, and it just wasn't happening for him. And you get sometimes players like that it doesn't work at one club, but then they move on to another club. Look at Ivan Toney, prime example there for that lad. You come back to that, don't you? Does he get a bit more service at Burton from their midfield than he did from us? Who knows? All you can hope for is that he signs for Wigan and they go down, and then that'll be our fault as well, won't it? Because he'll be agent Adebayo will be what it'll be.
Right, before we go, I need a score prediction, please, for Charlton away at the weekend. Steve, surprise us like you normally do. Anderson should be back. So.
Charlton away. Do you know what? I just fear for the next couple of games because of, and I know Anderson will be back. I just don't think we'll look very solid at back at the minute. And I'd like Cundy to prove me wrong, but for some reason I just don't think he will. I'm going to go for. I don't want to say Charlton's going to win, so I'm going to go 0-0.
Okay, I'll go for 1-1. Mads Anderson equaliser.
No, you can't have Mads Anderson. I have Mads Anderson when he scored. He's the man to goal.
Ian, your thoughts?
Optimist, I would say Phillips comes back, Anderson comes back, and we sneak a 2-1. But I think realistically, I'll probably go 1-1 because I think we're going to miss Edwards. So I'll go 1-1. Cole's due a goal. I'll give it Cole.
Where are you at the weekend, Adam? What are you covering?
Where am I? I'm at the home of anti-football this weekend, which is Wycombe.
They're on a good run, aren't they? They're on a very good run, aren't they, at the minute?
Well, he keeps getting results, doesn't he, Old Ainsworth? But yeah, I'm with Wednesday at Wycombe this weekend. So I know that me and Rob had a chat when this fixture came up, and he went to Wickham a couple of times last season and basically saw two of the most dire representations of the beautiful game that we've ever had. So wasn't particularly keen on going. So I was like, no, I'll go to Adams Park. I am Adam after all. You know, it'll all work out. In terms of Barnsley, though, I think kind of my heart wants to go with a kind of solid draw. My head with what's happening with Dean Holden and Charlton in the last couple of games suggests that Charlton might nick it. I'll go with the 1-1 like you guys have said, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Barnsley lost. I think for me, the key is the performance. And after the last couple of games, you know, concerns that you guys have rightly raised about certain players and attitudes and this, that, and the other, and a few players missing. If people come back and Barnsley put in a good showing, get a goal or two, but it doesn't necessarily come out way, you can live with that because Barnsley are in a decent position. What you don't want is a defeat and more questions about defending, you know, another game without scoring and coming away with more questions. So I think if Barnsley can go and give a good account of themselves in all areas of the pitch, irrespective of result, it's still in a decent spot.
Yeah, definitely. Lads, thank you very much. So Barnsley are away at Charlton, and I know we've lost 2 on the trot, but you know what? They need the fans, they need us behind them to turn that around yet again. Adam Oxley, thank you very much, and safe journey on Saturday. And
looking forward to it. Thank you.
And yeah, hope you see a nice home win there. And Ian. Ian, as always, thank you very much for joining us. Steve, you safe travels as well. You're off to Wales.
Where am I going?
I thought you were going to Wales. You told me you couldn't.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, not today. Yeah.
You've been listening to the Reds Report, powered by the best of Barnsley and part of the TalkSport network of fans.